Hi, everyone. I'm David Chadwick, and I'm the founding pastor of Moments of Hope Church. We're going to pause today with the study of the Gospel of John and do something very special. We wanted you to hear Frank Turek's presentation that he gave to our Hopesters a couple of Sunday nights ago. It is so powerful, so good, we just wanted you to hear it. You know, as John exposes a lot of who Jesus is, that's one of the major reasons John wrote the gospel, is to answer the question, who is Jesus? We need to be able to answer apologetically the questions that our culture's asking about Jesus. Now, the word apologetics doesn't mean that we are afraid of what we believe. It means that we are able to defend what we believe. So Frank gives us a lot of those answers in this presentation. He is a dear friend. In one of my darkest moments when I wondered if I could keep going on, Frank called me up, came by the house with a salad for him and a salad for me and a salad for Maryland. And he sat down about 3 hours with me and just talked to me and was there with me. He was simply a friend. He didn't try to pontificate. He didn't try to give me answers. He just was there, which is the best thing you can do as a friend when somebody is going through a difficult time. So over the next hour or so, Frank Turek is going to give this presentation. Since it is about an hour, let me offer now the opportunity for those of you who want to give and continue to support Moments of Hope Church. You can do that in the upper right-hand tab, Giving, it says on it. So please feel free to give to us what God lays on your heart. It really does help us continue to have our budget be what we want it to be. And of course, at the end of the year with the stock market at 30,000 or so, maybe some of you want to give a stock gift and let us have this work for the ministry of Jesus rather than for the federal government. But you can give directly there from the Giving tab. We invite you to do so right now. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you, in case you don't know him, Dr. Frank Turek, a world-renowned apologist, a very thoughtful man, and most importantly to me, a good friend. Here's Frank Turek.
Thank you, John. I want to go back to September 29th, 2006. That's when Petty Officer Michael Monsoor was United States Navy SEAL. He's standing on a roof in Ramadi, Iraq. He's got two Navy SEAL teammates lying in the sniper-prone position next to him. They've already taken AK-47 fire and a rocket-propelled grenade, but they're not exactly sure where the enemy is. There's a bit of a lull in the fighting. Insurgents have blocked off the streets in Ramadi, and there's someone on the loudspeaker in the town mosque yelling, "Kill the Americans!" As Monsoor and his team are looking for the next attack, an insurgent from an unknown location throws a grenade up on the roof. It hits Monsoor in the chest, and it falls to his feet. Due to the length of the throw, there's no opportunity to pick it up and throw it back. He has only a split second to make a decision. He can leap through the doorway behind him and save himself, but if he does, his two colleagues laying on the floor, laying on the roof in the sniper-prone position, will surely die. Monsoor yells, "Grenade!" But instead of jumping backward to save himself, he jumps forward, chest first, onto the grenade. It detonates. 30 minutes later, 25-year-old Michael Monsoor is dead. His two colleagues lying on the roof receive only minor injuries because Monsoor's body muffled the blast. In fact, one of the survivors said at Monsoor's funeral, "Mikey looked death in the face that day and said, 'You will not take my friends, I will go in their stead.'" I've never seen a United States president cry until April of 2008. That's when President George W. Bush invited Monsoor's parents into the East Room to give them their son's Medal of Honor posthumously. The president couldn't even get through the citation without breaking down. Since then, Monsoor's high school in Garden Grove, California, built a new stadium. They named it Michael A. Monsoor Memorial Stadium. The golden trident that the SEALs wear as their insignia dominates the 50-yard line. January 2019, North Island, California, just outside of San Diego, the United States Navy commissioned the USS Michael Monsoor, the newest guided missile destroyer in the fleet, Zumwalt class. This is Monsoor's mother, Sally, being escorted onto the ship, named in honor of her fallen son. Now, why did they do this? Because Michael Monsoor literally sacrificed himself to save his friends. There's no greater love than to sacrifice yourself to save your friends, said Jesus of Nazareth before he went to the cross. Doesn't matter what religion you're from. It doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter what nation you're from. Everybody knows there's something transcendent about someone sacrificing himself to save his friends. Michael Monsoor sacrificed himself to save his friends. The question is, would anybody sacrifice himself to save you? And the answer is, someone already has. His name is Jesus of Nazareth. But in today's culture, a lot of people don't think the story's true. As Pastor Chadwick and Pastor Casey were saying, there's a lot of skepticism out there. First of all, the Bible story has miracles in it. We don't believe in miracles anymore. Hasn't science disproven miracles? And it's got a resurrection. Who in here has seen someone rise from the dead? Yeah, I haven't either. Yet our entire faith is built on believing something that no one has ever seen in this room. How rational is that? And by the way, the New Testament documents, they're written down by religious people. We know religious people can embellish things, they can make things up. So why should we believe any of this? Well, actually, I think it's quite easy to show that Christianity is true. You only need to answer 4 questions in the affirmative to show that it's true. In other words, if you investigate these 4 questions, I think you'll realize that the answer to these 4 questions is yes. And if the answer to these 4 questions is yes, then Christianity is true. What are the 4 questions? Here are the 4 questions. Now, why are these the 4 questions? Truth, God, miracles, and the New Testament. And this is going to serve as our outline here tonight. We're going to go through these 4 questions and try and give you an overview of them. But why are they the 4? Does truth exist? Why is that important? Because you hear people saying there's no truth, or you got your truth, I got my truth, or all truth is relative, right? Well, if there is no truth, obviously Christianity can't be true. Of course, if there's no truth, then atheism couldn't be true either, right? So we're going to deal with that question first. Second question, does God exist? Obviously, Christianity can't be true if there's no God. I hope to show you tonight that there really is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator who created all things and sustains all things to this very moment. We're going to look at 3 arguments for this being. These arguments are taught in the Bible, but you don't need the Bible to know them. In fact, we're not even going to refer to the Bible when we do point 2. Just going to try and show you that God exists, a theistic God exists. Third question, are miracles possible? Why is that important? Because if miracles are not possible, Christianity can't be true. And a lot of people don't believe in miracles. Well, I hope to show you tonight that not only are miracles possible, but the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and even atheists are admitting the data for this miracle. We'll see that here tonight. Then we're going to get to the key question, is the New Testament true? The New Testament doesn't have a prayer if there's no truth, no God, or no miracles. But if truth exists, if God exists, if miracles are possible, then we can see if the documents are reliable enough to tell us whether or not one particular event from the ancient world took place, and that would be the resurrection, right? Because if Jesus rose from the dead, game over, Christianity's true. Of course, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, game over, it's false. It's not true. Even as the Apostle Paul said, when in his first letter to the Corinthians, he said, look, if Jesus hasn't risen from the dead, your faith is in vain. Everything hinges on the resurrection. Did the resurrection really occur? We're going to look at it and see if it did tonight. Now, We're not going to be able to cover this even in 90 minutes in great detail. So if you want to go further, the book's available on the book table, as well as a 12-part DVD series that goes through all this in much greater detail. Then there's a newer book out there called Stealing from God. Now, Christians, stealing from God is not about tithing, okay? The subtitle is Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. I've noticed that when atheists are arguing there is no God, they're actually stealing aspects of reality that would only exist if God existed in order to say he doesn't exist. In effect, they have to sit in God's lap to slap his face. Now, if you want to go further and get the books, you can also type the word evidence to 44222. Type the word evidence to 44222, not quotes, just the word evidence. And I'm going to send you this PowerPoint presentation I'm about to show you. In fact, I'm going to send you the fuller one. This is abbreviated. And a PDF format. We'll send you the first chapter of Stealing from God and some other free stuff. If you do get a book or a DVD set, I want to point out that all the proceeds from the sale of the books and the DVDs will go to feed needy children. Mine. Okay? Just so you know, I got 3 sons, so I need some help. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to start right here at point 1. Does truth exist? Are you guys ready to go? Yes. All right. Whenever you start talking about truth, you always have to start with Jack Nicholson. Right? Because Tom Cruise had him on the witness stand and he said to him, "Colonel, I want the truth." And Nicholson said, "You can't handle the truth." Moments of hope. That was not hopeful. If he said it that way, the movie would have gone nowhere. You can't handle. That's not how he said it. Here's how he said it.
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
All right, let's try it again. I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
That felt better, didn't it? Didn't that feel better? Well, there's a lot of people that can't handle the truth. They're saying, you got your truth, I got my truth, there is no truth, all truth is relative. Well, if you don't get anything outside of what we talk about here tonight, this is going to be the most important thinking skill we're going to talk about. In fact, if you get this thinking skill down, half of what you need to know to defend the Christian faith, you'll already know. I was 33 years old. I already had a master's degree, and I didn't even know what I'm about to show you today, to show you what a dimwit I was. But once you see this, you're going to go, wow, if I apply this across the board, this is going to be very helpful. What is this thinking skill? Well, the easiest way of showing you the thinking skill is to demonstrate using it. If someone were to come up to you and say, there is no truth, you should ask that person a question. What should the question be? Yeah, if somebody says there's no truth, you should say, hey, is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true. Did I say that right? Can everybody see this is known as a self-defeating statement? A self-defeating statement is a statement that doesn't meet its own standard. It would be like saying, I can't speak a word in English, right? If I said that, you'd go, you just used English to say it. Or it'd be like saying my parents had no kids that lived, right? Or my brother is an only child, right? These are self-defeating statements. And once you get good at identifying self-defeating statements, it's going to save you a lot of pain and suffering. Why? Because if you start living by false principles, many of the false principles that are all over our culture right now, eventually you're going to slam up against reality and it's going to hurt. So how do you identify these false statements? What you do is you turn the claim on itself. Turn the claim on itself. So if somebody says there's no truth, you turn the claim on itself and you say, is that? All right, let's do a few more. How about if somebody says all truth is relative? If you turn the claim on itself, what are you going to say? Is that a relative truth? No, that's an absolute truth. You're claiming it's absolutely true that all truth is relative. That's self-defeating. Or what if somebody says there are no absolutes? Is that an absolute? Or are you absolutely sure? Right, you could say it that way. How about if somebody says it's true for you but not for me? You hear that a lot. Is that true for everybody? Yeah, if somebody says it's true for you but not for me, say, hey, is that true for everybody? Is true for you but not for me true for everybody? Because if true for you but not for me is true for everybody, then true for you but not for me can't be true because it's true for everybody. Did I say that right? I know that can give you intellectual constipation if you think about it long enough. Why? But that's because it's self-defeating. Actually, there's a more fun way of dealing with this. If somebody says it's true for you but not for me, say, sure, go try that with your bank teller. Yeah, go to your bank teller and say, I'd like $100,000 out of my account. The bank teller looks at your account and says, I'm sorry, I only have $6.14 in your account. It's easy to get the money. You simply say, ha, that's true for you but not for me. Give me the $100,000. No, if it's true there was that much money in your account, that's just true for all people at all times in all places, and we're referring to your account at that time. It's just true. I go to a lot of churches. I normally ask people, do you believe Christianity's true? Most people will say yes, and then I'll ask them why. Do you know what answer I get more than any other? Because I have faith. Is that a good answer? Does your faith change anything about whether or not God exists? I mean, do you have to believe something to make it true? Do you have to believe in gravity to stay on the ground? Do people who don't believe in gravity float away? Hey, look, there's another one. Hey, if you believe, you'll come back. No, that's not the way it works. You say, why is the Bible always talking about faith then? Because there's two kinds of faith. This is a very important distinction. There's belief that, and then there's belief in. Belief that is getting evidence that God exists, that Jesus rose from the dead, that the Bible's telling the truth. That's what John said as apologetics, right? Giving evidence. But all the belief that in the world won't get your moral transgressions forgiven. For that, you got to go from belief that to belief in, or we might say trust in. You know James, the half-brother of Jesus who wrote that little book in the New Testament called? This is a sharp pastor, David. This is a sharp church, David. This is a sharp church. James, yes, he said, even the demons believe that God exists, but they tremble. They know intellectually that God exists better than we do, but they don't trust in him. There's a difference between belief that and belief in. Belief that is of the head. Belief in is not only of the head, but of the heart. When I first met my wife 35 years ago, I got evidence that she would be a good wife. But all the evidence in the world didn't make her my wife. I had to take a step of trust in her to ask her to be my wife. And in a momentary lapse of judgment, she said yes. That's the difference between belief that and belief in. Most of the time, when the Bible's talking about faith, it's talking about the second kind, trust in. After you know that Jesus is the Savior, trust in him. If you don't want to trust in him, that's fine. God will not force you into heaven against your will. If you don't want him now, you're not going to want him in eternity. How about this? You hear this quite a bit. There's no truth in anything but science. Someone says that. If you turn the claim on itself, what would you say back to him? Can you prove it? You could say that, but it's actually self-defeating. How's it self-defeating? You simply ask them, does that truth come from science? The truth that all truths come from science, does that truth come from science? No, that's a philosophical claim. You can't prove that in the laboratory. That's a philosophical claim. In fact, most of what you know, you don't know from science. Honey, do you love me? I don't know. Let's run an experiment. No, right? And you can't do science without philosophy. In the book, Stealing from God, we have a chapter on science, and the title of the chapter is this: Science doesn't say anything, scientists do. How many times have you heard politicians saying, we're going to follow the science? They say that all the time, right? What do you mean by that? Science doesn't say a word. Do you realize, is that why you get conflicting information on COVID? It's because all data needs to be gathered, all data needs to be interpreted, and who does that? Scientists do that in their minds. Maybe they've got wrong data. Maybe they don't have enough data. Maybe one group has more data than the other group. Maybe they're interpreting it differently. Maybe they have the wrong assumptions. Maybe there's other causes coming in here that they haven't identified yet. Science doesn't say a word. Scientists say things. How about this? You hear this a lot too. You should doubt everything. This is a skeptical claim, right? What do you say to somebody who says you should doubt everything? Should I doubt that? I mean, why are skeptics skeptical of everything but skepticism? You ever notice they're not skeptical of skepticism? Now, how many people in here, regardless of whether you're a Christian or atheist or anywhere in between, how many people in here sometimes doubt that what you believe is true? Look, if you don't have your hand up, you might not be thinking very much, right? Yeah, so I've written books on this, and sometimes I wake up in the morning and I go, I don't even know if this is true. You ever do that? But then I start thinking about it, and I start realizing that the evidence for Christianity is really good. So if I'm having a good day, everything looks fine. Bad day? I don't know. Good day, fine. Bad day, don't know. Good day, fine. Bad day, don't know. What's changing, me or the evidence? I'm going up and down. In fact, I do a lot of these presentations on college campuses when there's not a pandemic. And sometimes on a college campus, I'll see someone will say, you know, Frank, I used to be a Christian, but I lost my faith. Now, I don't mean to be unkind, but since I'm originally from New Jersey, sometimes I am. I almost want to say to him, when he says, I lost my faith, I want to say, so? Because your psychology changed? God no longer exists? Is that what you're saying? Because your psychology changed? Jesus hasn't risen from the dead? Do you know there are really smart people that are Christians and really smart people who are not Christians? It can't be just about smarts. A lot of it has to do with psychology, whether or not they believe the evidence or not. But your psychology will not tell you whether something's true or not. What will? The evidence will. So don't concentrate on your changing psychology. That can go up and down with the weather. Concentrate on the evidence. And if you concentrate on the evidence, as we're going to go through here, I think you're going to realize that it takes a lot more faith to disbelieve Christianity than it does to believe it. And if you start doubting your doubts, then you're back to knowing something for sure. Have you guys ever thought about doubting your doubts? I doubt it. How about this? You hear this a lot. You ought not judge. Now, when someone says that, if you turn the claim on itself, what would you say back to them? Yeah, then why are you judging me for judging? See, that's a judgment to say you ought not judge. You might go, wait a minute, Frank, time out. Didn't Jesus say don't judge? Nope, never said it. Frank, he said it right there in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. All right, I know this is going to sound a little odd, but it's true. There are no verses in the Bible. There are no verses in the Bible. Do you think when Matthew's writing his gospel, he goes, here's chapter 7, verse 1? No. When were the chapter and verse divisions put in? About 500 years ago to help us navigate the text, which is a good thing. It's a really long series of books. It's a library of books. It'd be hard to find yourself your way around without numbers. The problem is we tend to think if it's got a number in front of it, we can take it out and make it say whatever we want. If you read the whole passage, what does it say? Judge not, lest you be judged. By the same standard you judge others, you be judged by that standard. So before you try and take the speck out of your brother's eye, you hypocrite, which is a judgment, take the log out of your own eye first, then you'll be better able to help your brother. Is Jesus telling us not to judge? No, he's actually telling us to take the speck out of our brother's eye. That involves making a judgment. He's simply saying, get that problem out of your life so you can better help your brother. So this is not a command not to judge. It's actually a command on how to judge. Don't judge hypocritically. If you've got that problem, fix it, then go help your brother. But it would be completely ridiculous to say don't make judgments. Why? Number one, it's a judgment itself. Number two, you'd be dead already if you didn't make judgments. You made 100 judgments just getting over here tonight. Good choices from bad choices. Safe choices from dangerous choices. Everybody makes judgments. Atheists make judgments. What judgments do they make? There's no God. Jesus didn't rise from the dead. Bible's not telling the truth. There is no objective morality. There is no real meaning to life. You're just going to die and become worm food. Have a nice day. Those are all judgments. Are they true judgments? The question isn't whether or not you can make judgments. The question is, are your judgments true? I will say this, though. Jesus did save a very stern rebuke for people who were judgmental. And who were the judgmental ones in his day? Pharisees. Now, what were the Pharisees? They were the religious and political leaders of Israel. Remember, Rome delegated much of the political authority to the Sanhedrin, to the Jews, and Pharisees were on the Sanhedrin. So Jesus went after these people. Are you telling me Jesus got involved in politics? Yes! And he wasn't so nice doing it. In fact, if you think Jesus was a sweet guy who's never said a bad word about anyone, you have not read John chapter 2, John chapter 8, or Matthew chapter 23. What happens in John chapter 2? Jesus makes a whip and he goes in and he jacks people up in the temple. What? Sweet and gentle Jesus did this? Yes! And then in John chapter 8, he's talking to these religious political leaders, the Pharisees. He's having a bit of an argument with them. And right in the middle of the argument, he stops and he says, "Your father is the devil." Jesus, you can't say that. That's not very Christ-like. Excuse me, I am Christ. Can you imagine you're having a conversation with somebody and you go, your father is the devil? Never do that with a sibling, by the way, okay? But that's what Jesus did. And then in Matthew 23, just read the whole chapter. He's excoriating these people. He says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Oh, you look great on the outside. You're whitewashed tombs, but on the inside, you're full of dead men's bones. You go a mile to make a convert, and then once you make them a convert, you make them twice as much a son of hell as you are. How will you avoid being condemned to hell? What? Sweet and gentle Jesus said this? Yes, Jesus was not Barney. Can't we all just get along, boys and girls? No. I came to bring a sword. It's going to divide mother and daughter, father and son. Jesus was tough. In fact, why was Jesus killed? Do you think he was killed for skipping around saying, love your neighbor? Did that get him killed? Love your neighbor. You must die. No. Why was he killed? Number one, because he claimed to be God, and that was blasphemy to the Jews and sedition to the Romans. And number two is because he spoke truth to power, particularly the temple Jews who didn't want their whole business to go out of business. They killed him because he stood up and he made some pretty harsh judgments on people. Now, we're to make judgments without being judgmental. I don't know who said this, but it was right. They said that evangelism is just one beggar showing another beggar where the food is. We're no better than anyone without Christ. We're all fallen. But that doesn't mean we don't make judgments. We have to make judgments without being judgmental. By the way, I've noticed one other thing about judging. You ever notice that when you compliment somebody, which is a judgment, nobody gets upset? You know, if I say to David, David, you're such a wonderful person. I wish I could be like you. You think he's going to go, who are you to judge? Right? He's never going to say that. See, I've noticed that people don't have a problem with judging. They just have a problem with judgments they don't like. As Augustine said, we love the truth when it enlightens us. We hate the truth when it convicts us. If you've told somebody the truth and they're angry with you, you just help convict them. For you military people in here, you always get more flack when you're over the target. If you tell somebody something that's true and they're barking back at you, you're over the target. They don't want their evil deeds exposed. As Jesus said, men love darkness rather than light. In fact, most of us probably in this room in the past week have barked at somebody who we love and love us because they exposed something we didn't want exposed. Right? So we have to make judgments without being judgmental. So let's sum up this truth section this way. Can everybody see that this statement right here shoots itself? Can everybody see that? And every other statement we've been through shoots itself. All truth is relative. There are no absolutes. All truth comes from science. True for you, but not for me. You ought not judge. You should doubt everything. These are all self-defeating statements. And once you can get good at identifying self-defeating statements, it's going to save you a lot of pain, a lot of trouble, a lot of suffering. And it's also going to help you identify false teachings. Because this little technique here helps you identify false teachings. All right? So, there is truth. Truth does exist. The next question, is it true that God exists? So you can't get away from objective truth. If our reasoning is good right here, what does this mean? It means relativism and postmodernism are false. Why? Because they claim it's true that there is no truth, which obviously can't be true. Actually, there's one way to get away from objective truth temporarily. What you do is you suppress it, as Paul says in Romans chapter 1, that many of us suppress the truth in unrighteousness to go our own way. This is why on a college campus, and maybe not everyone's here a Christian right now, during the Q&A, I may want to ask you a question if you're not a Christian. I'll warn you now, just because it's not fair for me to ask you a question without you knowing what it is. And this is a question I ask on college campuses a lot, particularly when atheists get up to the Q&A microphone. If they express any hostility at all, I'll normally ask them this question. The question is, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? I've had atheists stand at that microphone in front of hundreds of people and say, no. No? Wait, you claim to be reasonable and rational, and I ask you if something were true, would you believe it? And you say no. How's that reasonable? It's not. The problem isn't here, the problem's here. They don't want it to be true. They don't want there to be a God. Why? Because they want to be God of their own lives. See, God's getting in the way, they think, of their happiness. They're not on a truth quest, they're on a happiness quest. And they think Jesus is going to get in the way of their happiness. Now look, you can make yourself happy over the short term doing a lot of fun things, but over the long term, it's a disaster. And everyone in this room who's over 40 knows what I'm talking about because many of us have tried it ourselves, right? The only way to get ultimate contentment and happiness is to go straight through truth, and Jesus is the truth. So always ask the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And see what they say. In fact, let me take a quick survey here. This is just for Christians in this room. If you're not a Christian, thank you for being here, but this question isn't for you. Christians, I want you to think of somebody you know who's not a Christian whom you'd like to be a Christian. Friend, relative, whoever it is. Everyone have somebody? Okay, don't point to them. Okay. Here's my question about the person you're thinking of. Is the person you're thinking of on a relentless pursuit of truth? They want to know if Christianity is true. Or are they apathetic or maybe even hostile to Christianity? How many people say the person I'm thinking of is on a relentless pursuit of truth? Raise your hand up high, please. 3. How many people say the person I'm thinking of is apathetic or hostile? Look around the room. It's everybody else. It's usually 100 to 0 or 99 to 1. Most people are looking for God like a criminal's looking for a cop. They don't want God to exist because they want to be God of their own lives. So always ask the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? This is not a matter of information. People don't want the information, many of them. They just want to do what they want to do. Now, what can you do for somebody like that? What you can do is pray for them, love them, plant seeds. And at some point, something might happen in their lives, and your phone will ring and that person will be on the other end. Because who are they going to call when something goes wrong? They're not going to call their atheist friend. What's the atheist going to say? This stuff just happens. There's no rhyme or reason. Too bad. They're going to call someone of spiritual depth, and that could be you. When the student's ready, the teacher will appear. All right, let's move on now to the second question, does God exist? And I mentioned 3 arguments for the existence of God. Let me just lay them out here. We're going to spend most of our time on this section right here. The first is the argument from the beginning of the universe, known as the cosmological argument. Now, cosmological comes from the Greek word cosmos, which means world or universe. And it says if the universe had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. The second argument is the argument from design. This is technically known as the teleological argument. Telos is a Greek word meaning design or purpose. And it says if there's design in the universe and design in you, life, there must be a designer. Now, these 2 arguments have scientific evidence behind them. We'll see some of that. The third argument doesn't have any science behind it. It's more philosophical in nature, yet it's the argument you've all intuitively understood since you were very small children, and it's the argument from morality known as the moral argument. And it says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, just one, like it's wrong to torture babies for fun, or it's wrong to murder 6 million people in a Holocaust, then there has to be a God. Why? Because if there is no standard beyond humanity, then everything's just a matter of opinion. That's just your opinion against the baby torturer's opinion, or your opinion against, say, Hitler's opinion. Well, we know these things aren't just a matter of opinion. It's really wrong to torture babies for fun. It's really wrong to murder people. If that's the case, there must be an objective standard of rightness, goodness, justice, to which we are obligated to obey. And that's what we mean by God's nature. If God doesn't exist, you can't say anything's right or wrong. We'll get to that later. Let's start right here at the cosmological argument. Now, this argument from the beginning of the universe is the argument that many say points back to the Big. Now, I know some of you are going, Frank, we're Christians in here. We don't believe in the Big Bang. You guys don't believe in the Big Bang? I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. In fact, the evidence for the Big Bang is so good that even atheistic scientists are admitting the evidence. Stephen Hawking, who was the top physicist, most popular physicist in the world till he died a few years ago, put it this way. He said almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Now, Hawking tried to come up with another explanation or cause other than God. He fails, but he's admitting the data, that space-time and matter had a beginning out of nothing. A Russian cosmologist, a colleague of his by the name of Alexander Vilenkin, he's an agnostic, he put it this way. He said, with the proof now in place, cosmologists, by the way, a cosmologist is not someone that puts on your makeup. All right? Cosmologist is someone who studies the origin of the universe. Cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is now no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Now, notice there are two words here that are interesting. First, proof. It's unlikely or uncommon for scientists to use the word proof. Why? Because science is tentative. You get more data, you may reinterpret it, but Vilenkin sees so much evidence crossing at one truth, that the universe had a beginning, that he says it now constitutes a proof. The other interesting thing is the word problem. Why is it a problem that there's a cosmic beginning? Yeah, because if everything in space-time and matter had a beginning, if space-time and matter literally had a beginning, what could have begun that? What could have caused that? Something outside of space-time and matter. In fact, we're going to get to that here in just a second. And I'm not going to show you the evidence for this. Why? Number one, we don't have time. Number two, it's all in the book. And number three, it's not controversial. The atheists are admitting it. So we're just going to jump to the bottom line. What's the bottom line? Here it is. If the universe had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. We've got two options. Either no one created something out of nothing, which is the atheistic view, or someone created something out of nothing, which is the theistic view. Now, here's the only question I have. Which view is more reasonable? That no one created something out of nothing, or that someone created something out of nothing? What do you think? I was at Texas A&M 10 years ago, and one atheist said, I think number one is more reasonable. I said, time out. Let's look at number two first. Number two says someone created something out of nothing. Now, that's a miracle, right? But at least you got a miracle worker. You got someone. Number one is a miracle with no miracle worker. That's clearly absurd. Do you realize that everyone believes in at least one miracle? Atheists believe in a miracle. What? They believe that no one created something out of nothing. We believe that someone created something out of it. Everyone's believing in at least one miracle. The only question is which view is more reasonable. So at Texas A&M that night, I said, to show you how seriously we all take the law of causality. And by the way, the law of causality doesn't say everything has a cause. The law of causality says everything that comes to be has a cause. It doesn't say everything has a cause. There has to be an uncaused first cause. There has to be what the Bible would call a great I am, an uncaused first cause that created everything else and keeps it going. You can't go on an infinite regress of causes. There's got to be an uncaused first cause. It's either the universe or something outside the universe. So I said to the audience that night at A&M, I said, to show you how seriously we all take the law of causality, that things don't pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause. There is nobody currently sitting here in this auditorium tonight who is currently worried that as you sit here, a hippopotamus has appeared out of nothing, by nothing, in your dorm room and is currently pooping on your pillow, right? You don't worry about that. You're not worried that a raging Bengal tiger is just going to appear out of nothing in this room and start devouring people. Why? Because you know that things don't pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause. And if they did, if the whole universe could do so, why doesn't everything pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause? Why don't Teslas pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause? You wake up one morning, your Hyundai is a Tesla. You go, how do I charge this thing, you know? Why don't MacBook Pros pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause? Could have saved me like $4,000 if I was just a little bit more patient. If you're hungry after this thing tonight and you want to have a pizza, does it make sense to order one? Or should you just sit in your kitchen, wait, and hope one pops into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause? No, it's the atheists that have all the faith. In fact, here's a question to ask an atheist. If there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all? If there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all? In other words, if there is no God, why does anything exist? That's a hard question to answer if there is no God. Now think about this. If space, time, and matter had a beginning, What could have created space-time and matter? It can't be something in space-time and matter. That didn't exist. In other words, the cause of the universe must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful to create the universe out of nothing, personal in order to choose to create. Why personal? Because to go from a state of nothingness to a state of creation, someone had to make a choice, and only persons make choices. The being would also have to be intelligent in order to be personal to make a choice. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of? God. You say, well, how do you know it's the Christian God, Frank? We don't. Yet. We haven't done enough research yet. This could be Allah, right? We don't know yet. But if we continue to go through the points and we look at the other arguments for God and miracles in the New Testament, we're going to realize that the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,987 years ago is the same being in whose divine nature created the universe out of nothing. But we haven't gotten there yet. None of these arguments get you all the way to the Christian God. They get you part of the way there. You need the whole thing to figure it out. All right. Let's go to the second argument, the design argument. There's two aspects to this. The universe is design and life is design. Let's look at the universe first. Scientists have discovered in recent years, like recent decades, I should say, that the universe is fine-tuned for life to exist here on Earth. In fact, it's fine-tuned to even exist at all. That if you were to change any one of a number of factors about the universe virtually imperceptibly, there would either be no universe or certainly no universe that could support life. Even atheists admit this, like Stephen Hawking. Here's what he said. He said, if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million, a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. If you were to change the expansion rate, that infinitesimal amount from the very beginning, none of us would be here. Now, you can't make any sort of evolutionary kind of explanation for this because the expansion rate did not evolve to this point. It started there. Seems like the same being that created space, matter, and time is the same being that fine-tuned that expansion rate to be precisely what it needed to be. Also, the gravitational force, if you were to alter that by more than 1 in 10 to the 40th power, we wouldn't exist. You say, what's 1 in 10 to the 40th power? I can't get my head around that number. I know, neither can I, so let me give you an illustration. Take a tape measure and stretch it across the entire known universe. That's a long way. You can't get that tape measure at Lowe's, okay? Set the gravitational force at a particular inch mark on that tape measure. I realize gravity's not measured in inches, but this just to give you a scale idea in your mind. If the strength of gravity were different by 1 inch in either direction across a scale as wide as the entire known universe, we wouldn't be here. That's 1 in 10 to the 40 precision. I don't have enough faith to believe that that value just landed there by chance. In fact, does chance cause anything? When scientists use the word chance, what does that mean? Who caused this? Chance, he was just here. No. Chance is not a cause. Chance is a word we use to describe mathematical possibilities. Chance doesn't do anything. And yet you hear scientists saying, well, by chance it got here. You know what that really means? We don't know. Look, there's only 2 possibilities. Either somebody designed that value to be that way, or they didn't. What makes more sense? Somebody designed it. It's either designed or it's not, right? You can even make an argument our solar system is designed. Let's take a look at the solar system here for a second. Where are we? Right there, third rock from the sun. If we were just a little bit closer to or a little bit further away from the sun, we couldn't survive. A little bit closer to, we'd burn up. A little bit further away, we'd freeze. We are what scientists call the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. It is, that's a lie. It was too cold here this morning. Axial tilt, 23.5 degrees. Change that slightly, we don't exist. Earth rotation, 24 hours. Change that slightly, we don't exist. The size and distance of the moon from us. Change that slightly, we don't exist. If Jupiter right here was not in its current orbit, we couldn't exist here on Earth. Why not? Because Jupiter's gravitational force is so strong that it attracts most of the meteors and space junk to it rather than us. If you take a close-up look at Jupiter, you see these dark marks? Those are comet fragment strikes that are bigger than the Earth. Thank God for Jupiter. Because if Jupiter wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. Same thing is true with Saturn. In fact, you want to take a look at the different planets? Here you go. You got Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Earth. Look at poor Pluto down here. You know, Pluto recently has been demoted as a planet. I don't know about you, but I think it's size discrimination. Take a look at this. You can hardly see Pluto. Take a look at this. That's Arcturus. That's another star in our galaxy. Jupiter is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Earth is invisible. Pluto, forget about it. All right, keep an eye on Arcturus now. Where's Arcturus now? Way over to the right. See it right there? The sun is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Jupiter is invisible. Earth, Pluto, forget about them. In fact, if the Earth was the size of a golf ball, Betelgeuse here would be 5 or 6 Empire State Buildings high. The heavens are awesome. This is just in our galaxy. This is not outside our galaxy. And the average distance between stars in our galaxy is 30 trillion miles, and all that distance is necessary for us to exist here on Earth. Now, 30 trillion miles, how far is that? Far. Take you at least 2 tanks of gas and a Toyota Prius to go 30 trillion miles. A number of years ago, my wife and I took our 3 sons to Tucson, Arizona to visit the in-laws, and we went to the Desert Museum out in the desert there. And if you're out there at night, on a clear night, you can see thousands of stars in the sky. So we're out there this one night, and the guide says, it's so clear tonight that if we look up at 9:03, we will see the Space Shuttle in orbit. I said, oh, come on, we're not going to see the Space Shuttle. I mean, it's only 120 feet long. It's 350 miles up. We're not going to see it. Oh, me of little faith. At 9:03, the guide goes, look! We look up in the sky about 70 degrees above the horizon. There's an object streaking across the western desert sky relative to us about like this. When it got right about here, it disappeared. I don't know whether Scotty beamed it up or what. Actually, what happened was, despite the fact that we were in total darkness, the space shuttle was so high up that the sun was still reflecting off of it, and when it got out of the range of the sun, we couldn't see it anymore. Now, when the space shuttle was in orbit, the space shuttle was traveling at about 18,000 miles an hour. That's 5 miles per second. You got trouble getting to work in the morning? Take the space shuttle. 5 miles a second. Think about how fast that is. Well, I did a little calculation to try and figure out how long would it take us if we could get in the space shuttle and go from our star, the sun, to another star in our galaxy, an average distance away 30 trillion miles. In other words, how long would it take us to go 30 trillion miles if we could go 5 miles per second? How long do you think it would take us? A long time. You must be a math major. Yeah. It would take us 201,450 years. That means if you got in the space shuttle at the time of Christ and started traveling from our star, the sun, to another star an average distance away in our galaxy, you've been going 5 miles a second for 2,000 years. You'd be less than 1/100th of the way there right now. And we're going to explore space. No, we're not. We're not going anywhere in space. We can hardly get out of our solar system. Forget about it. In fact, the Hubble Space Telescope did some amazing things, as you know, to bring back deep space to us. And in 2003, 2004, Hubble Deep Field was that they trained the Hubble on 1/24 millionth of the sky. What's 1/24 millionth of the sky? Go out tonight, put a piece of rice in the end of your finger, hold it up. That piece of rice approximates 1/24 millionth of the sky. What I want to do is show you what they found in 1/24 millionth of the sky. It's in the southern hemisphere. I don't know if you can see this, but along the bottom here, these are mountains, okay? When I start the video, you're going to see the constellations come up, and then Hubble Ultra Deep Field is going to zoom in on 1/24 millionth of the sky. There's no audio. It's just video. This is public domain. You can find it on the internet. Are you ready? Here we go. There are the constellations. Now Hubble's going to zoom. What you're looking at are nearly 10,000 galaxies in 1/24 millionth of the sky. And how many stars are out there? University of Hawaii researchers did the calculations. The number of stars that are out there are about equivalent to the number of grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth times 100,000. Now you know why the heavens declare the glory of God. Now you know what it means when the psalmist says, "For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his love for those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us." Is it possible that the God that created and sustains this entire universe that's incomprehensible to us might have a reason for some difficulty you're going through, even if you don't know what that reason is? You want to know what God is like? Look to the heavens. What do you see when you look to the heavens? Stars equivalent to 100,000 Earths, the grains of sand on 100,000 Earths. Over 200,000 years at 5 miles a second between those stars, just in our galaxy. It's infinite. That's the point. Now you might say, well, I'm insignificant if this is true. No, you're not, because you're actually even more amazing than the heavens are. The heavens aren't made in the image of God, but you are. In fact, this was you at 11 weeks. Question, is this animal, mineral, vegetable, or human? In fact, let's go back even before 11 weeks. Let's go back to when your mother and your father got together to conceive you. Have you guys had this talk before? I see some young people in here, so I'll try and be discreet. I also see some older people in here, so I'll try and be discreet as well, just in case you've forgotten how this works. When your mother and father got together to conceive you, your mother unconsciously perfumed her egg to attract your father, and then your father sent the entire population of the United States, 300 million soldiers, toward your mother's egg. And then there was a race. And you won! Don't let anyone ever tell you you're not special. You beat 300 million others. You have blown away anything Michael Phelps has done. Now, seeing some of you limping here earlier makes it hard for me to believe you were the fastest soldier in the gene pool. But you were. Now, your soldier was 20 to 30 times smaller than a grain of salt, yet it contained half of the 3.2 billion letter genome that makes you you, all the letters in the right order. And your mother's egg was about the size of a period at the end of a sentence in an average book, And that contained the other half of the 3.2 billion letter genome that makes you you. Again, all the letters in the right order. And when your soldier and your egg came together, a new 100% genetic human being was created. You know, you have not received any more genetic information from this point until right now. In fact, your genetic information has just duplicated itself. In fact, there were only 4 things that separated you from adulthood: time, air, water, and food. Does this have implications on the abortion issue? Yeah, I think it does. We don't kill the 2-year-old. Why do we kill the unborn child in the womb? Genetically, it's the same. You say, wait a minute, Frank. You can't legislate morality. Okay, no extra charge for this. This is the subject of our first book, creatively titled Legislating Morality. And that is, all laws legislate morality. Every law declares one behavior right and the opposite behavior wrong. You can't think of a law which doesn't legislate morality. The only question is, whose morality will we legislate? And when people say, Frank, don't impose your morality on me, I ask, why not? Would that be immoral? And do you notice you're imposing your morality on me right now? This is a self-defeating proposition to say you ought not impose ought nots. That's what they're doing to me right now. They're telling me I ought not impose ought nots. That's what you're telling me I can't do. You're doing it to me. Actually, there's a better answer to this. If somebody says, don't impose your morality on me, I go, this isn't my morality. I didn't make this stuff up. I didn't make up the fact that murder's wrong, that abortion's wrong, that rape is wrong, that theft is wrong, that men were made for women and women were made for men. And the best way to perpetuate and stabilize society, which is the reason the government's involved in marriage to begin with, is to legally recognize that man-woman relationship over every other relationship. I didn't make any of this stuff up. This isn't my morality. This isn't your morality. This just happens to be the morality. The one Thomas Jefferson said was self-evident. The one the Apostle Paul said, the Gentiles who have the law written on their hearts. So if you have a problem with the morality, you don't have a problem with me. I didn't make it up. You have a problem with the Creator on whose nature this morality is derived. All right, no extra charge for that. Let's go back to this. From this point till right now, a construction project of astonishing complexity began taking place. Cells began multiplying at a rate of 4,000 cells per second. Brain cells began multiplying at a rate of 100,000 cells per second, for most of you anyway. Some cells became brain cells, others heart cells, others lung cells. How did they know how to do this? Nobody knows. Some cells went so far across you to become what they needed to become that it would be equivalent to you today walking across the United States alone. And that construction project continues to this very moment. You just made 4 million new red blood cells. You just made another 4 million new red blood cells. You just made another 4. Knock it off. How do you know how to do that? Are you concentrating on this? Are you going, hold on, Frank, I got to concentrate. New red blood cells coming up. No, this is just happening. How is it happening? You know, Aristotle recognized something 2,400 years ago. He didn't know anything about blood cells, but he knew about nature. And he said, you ever notice that nature is always going in a direction? You ever notice that an acorn, if it's properly nourished, will always become an oak tree? Why doesn't it become an elm tree? Or a birch tree, or a seahorse? You say, because it's programmed to become an oak tree. Well, who programmed it? And is an acorn conscious? Is an acorn in the ground going, what do I have to do to become an oak tree? No. But if it's properly nourished, it consistently goes in a direction of becoming an oak tree. If it doesn't have a mind of its own, yet it consistently goes in a direction, there must be an external mind directing it toward that end. That's what Aristotle called the unmoved mover. Thomas Aquinas came along in the 1200s AD and he said, this is going to be my 5th way to argue for God, that everything's going in a direction. If everything's going in a direction, there must be a director. In fact, God is to the universe what a band is to music. If a band were up here playing the music, what would happen to the music the second the band stopped playing? Music would be over, right? In other words, the band creates and sustains the music. That's what God does to the universe and to you. He creates you, and he sustains you. In other words, this cause that Aquinas and Aristotle are talking about, they're not talking about a Big Bang cause way back when. They're talking about a cause every single second that the universe and you exist. That God creates all the natural laws and keeps them all going in a direction. And he keeps your bodies going in a direction. And as soon as he takes his hands away, it goes out of existence. This is why the Apostle Paul says, in him we live and move and have our being. And the writer of Hebrews says that God sustains all things by his powerful word. So even if the universe didn't have a beginning, you'd need a being like God to sustain this kind of orderly universe and to keep everything going in a direction. Now, we could spend a lot more time on that, but we got to keep moving. That's more the stealing from God book. Let's now move on to the moral argument. And the moral argument says that nothing can be right or wrong unless God exists, not objectively. Let me ask you a question. How do you know that your quarterback throwing a touchdown is better than your quarterback throwing an interception? How do you know that? What do you have to know in order to make that judgment? Not just the rules. You got to know the purpose of the game, right? If you don't know the purpose of the game, you can't say a touchdown's better than an interception. You need a purpose to know whether one play is a good play and another play is a bad play. If there is no God, there's no purpose. So how can you say one particular behavior is good and another behavior is bad? It's directionless without God if there's no purpose to life. So from a pragmatic point of view, you need to have a purpose. From a moral point of view, you also need to have a purpose. Because without God, everything's just a matter of opinion. It's just your opinion against someone else's opinion. Now, what is the purpose of life? Well, we're out of time. What is the purpose of life? Jesus says it in John 17. He says, when he's praying to the Father, he's saying, this is eternal life, that they, meaning us, may know you, God the Father, and Jesus Christ whom you've sent. The purpose of life is to know God. Not just know that he exists, but to trust in him, to know God and to make him known. That's why we're here. Everything flows from that. If there is no God, there's no purpose, which means there's no right way to live life and no wrong way to live life. Just like there's no right or wrong way to play a football game if there's no purpose to the game. If there is no God, then the Nazis were not wrong. How can you say the Nazis are wrong? If people are no more valuable than roaches, you can't say the Holocaust was wrong or the Nazis were wrong. But you can say it, you just can't justify it. Now, by the way, I'm not saying atheists can't be good people. I'm not saying atheists don't know right from wrong. I'm simply saying atheists can't justify right from wrong. If there is no God, love is no better than rape. Not objectively. You might prefer love more than rape, but it's not better in an objective way. There's no standard. It's just your opinion. If there is no God, there are no human rights. Obviously, we have a big political divide in our country today. People are claiming certain rights. Some people claiming certain rights are atheists. Where do rights come from if there's no God? They don't come from governments. What, when a new government comes in, you no longer have your rights? Is that what you're saying? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men were created and endowed by their government, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. In fact, the Declaration of Independence was because King George was violating the rights of the colonists. Racism isn't wrong. Slavery isn't wrong. Nothing's right or wrong unless God exists. The only worldview that's going to end racism is Christianity. Islam isn't going to do it. If you're not a Muslim, you're a second-class citizen. Hindus aren't going to do it. They have a caste system. Atheists aren't going to do it. They have no standard by which to judge racism right or wrong. The only worldview that's going to end racism is Christianity. We're all one in Christ. Slave, free, men, women, Gentile, Jew. We're all made in the image of God. Tolerance is no better than intolerance if there's no God. Now, by the way, are Christians commanded to be tolerant? No, why? Because tolerance is too weak. Tolerance says hold your nose and put up with them. Christians are commanded to be loving. Love means you reach out and help them. And sometimes love means you don't tolerate what they do. Every parent in here knows. Every kid in here knows. Every former child in here knows that if your parent tolerates everything you want to do as a child, you're not loving. You've got to stand in the way of evil if you want to love somebody. Love does not mean approval. If you approve everything your kid wants to do, you don't love that kid. Same thing is true with your neighbor. And you can't say that evil disproves God, because actually evil proves God does exist. You say, well, how can evil prove God does exist? If there's no God, you can't complain about the problem of evil. Well, C.S. Lewis was an atheist early on in his life. He went through the terrible war of World War I. He said there can't be a good God because there's too much injustice in the world, too much injustice. And then one day he had an epiphany. He realized it didn't disprove God, it proved God. Here's what he said in Mere Christianity. As an atheist, my argument against God was that the universe seems so cruel and unjust. But how would I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust? You wouldn't know what a crooked line was unless you knew what a straight line was. You wouldn't know what injustice was unless you knew what justice was. And what do we mean by justice? That's God's nature. In fact, you'll never get justice unless God exists. See, evil doesn't exist on its own. Evil exists only as a lack in a good thing. Evil is like cancer. If you take all the cancer out of a good body, you got a better body. What happens if you take all the body out of the cancer? It doesn't exist. There's no such thing. Evil doesn't exist on its own. Evil is like rust in a car. If you take all the rust out of a car, you got a better car. If you take all the car out of the rust, what do you got? Nothing. So ultimate reality is good. It can't be evil. This is why, as C.S. Lewis famously pointed out, Christianity has always viewed the devil as a fallen angel. The devil is metaphysically good. He has good qualities, but he uses them for evil. Evil doesn't exist on its own. It only exists if good exists, but good only exists if God exists. So evil doesn't disprove God. It may prove there's a devil out there, but it doesn't disprove God, because evil can't exist unless good exists, and good can't exist in an objective way unless God exists. So, you could put it this way. The shadows prove the sunshine. In order to have shadows, you have to have sunshine. In other words, in order to have evil, you have to have good. Oh, you can have sunshine without shadows. You can have good without evil, but you can't have shadows without sunshine. You can't have evil without good. Now, you can ask the question, why would God allow certain evils to exist? Maybe we'll get to that during the Q&A, but we got to keep moving. We got to draw a conclusion here. Here's the conclusion from this section. I said we're spending most of our time in this section. The cosmological, teleological, and moral arguments. From these three arguments, here's what you get. A spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator who creates all things and sustains all things. And we haven't even opened the Bible yet. Now, how do we know it's the God of the Bible? For that, we got to move on to the next question. But before we do, I want to give you one quote from C.S. Lewis. And I can't say anything better than C.S. Lewis. I just gave you one. Here's another one. Because a lot of people are going to go, well, don't atheists have answers to this? No. In fact, if atheism's true, it's impossible to have answers to this. Why? Here's what Lewis said. Follow this. It's a 2-slide quote. You ready? Check this out. Suppose there were no intelligence behind the universe. In that case, nobody designed my brain for the purpose of thinking. Thought is merely the byproduct of some atoms within my skull. But if so, how can I trust my own thinking to be true? You with me so far? Or are you with him so far? Okay, let's keep going. But if I can't trust my own thinking, of course I can't trust the arguments leading to atheism, and therefore have no reason to be an atheist or anything else. Unless I believe in God, I can't believe in thought, so I can never use thought to disbelieve in God. Boom. That's all you can. As John Madden used to say, boom. That's all you can say, boom. How can you say it better than that? Look, if atheism's true and we're just moist robots, we shouldn't be able to even think, yet we can think. What best explains our ability to think? There's a great mind who gave us the capacity to do so. We shouldn't trust our brains. unless they were designed. All right, so how do we know who the true God is? For that, are miracles possible? You go, Frank, we only got like 30 minutes before we got to go to questions. This is a short one. It's easy to show that miracles are possible. The problem is a lot of people don't think miracles are possible. In fact, they think miracles are really incredible, like some believe, like Noah. I mean, how can you believe in Noah? Christians, can we just keep this in the room? Don't let this get out of the room, but can we all agree that Noah and the ark is crazy? Crazy. Admit it. A resurrection. How many have seen a resurrection? I already asked. Nobody has seen a resurrection here, yet our faith believes or requires us to believe in something we've never seen. How rational is that? And for some reason, the big problem in the Bible is Jonah. Is that a whale of a tale or a tale of a whale? I mean, what is the deal with Jonah? Can you really believe in Jonah and the whale? I mean, come on. Now, what is the greatest miracle in the Bible? Yeah, it's not the resurrection. The greatest miracle in the Bible is, I got some of you a second time. Yeah, the greatest miracle in the Bible is the first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. If that verse is true, every other verse is at least possible, right? I mean, if God can create the universe out of nothing, can he do whatever he wants that's not logically impossible inside the universe? Of course he can. The interesting thing is the atheists are admitting the evidence for the greatest miracle. They're already admitting Genesis 1:1 appears to be true. Now, they don't think it's God, but what else could cause a spaceless, timeless, or what else could cause space, time, and matter to come into existence? Something spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. So, yes, Noah and the ark is crazy, unless God exists. Of course, resurrections don't occur unless God exists. Now, I know some people are thinking, look, Frank, I can't believe anything I haven't seen. Or, I don't see miracles today. Why should I believe they occurred in the past? You believe in a lot of things you've never seen. You believe in your mind. Have you ever seen it? You're using it right now, I hope. You believe in the laws of logic and the laws of mathematics. Have you ever seen them? No. You believe in justice. Have you ever seen justice? Oh, you may have seen justice done or not done, but you've never seen justice itself because it's not a physical thing. Many years ago, I debated the atheist Christopher Hitchens. You guys know who Christopher Hitchens was? He was a brilliant British atheist who had a British accent, so he sounded more brilliant than he was. But he was a materialist, and at one of our debates at the College of New Jersey, a student from the audience asked Hitchens a question. He said, Christopher, what is love? Christopher, being a materialist, had to give some sort of materialist answer. So he finally said, love is a chemical. And I said, don't tell that to your wife. Honey, do you love me? Yeah. Why? Because I got the chemical. No, love's not a chemical. It's an immaterial virtue grounded in the nature of God. Everyone in this room knows that love exists, but none of you have seen it. It's not something you see. You believe in gravity. You've never seen gravity. Frank, there it is right there. Look, there's gravity pulling that. No, you're not seeing gravity. What are you seeing? You're seeing the effects of gravity. It's an effect. We don't even really know what gravity is. And this is how we know God exists. We don't see God directly. We see the effects of God. We see a creation, that's the effect. We reason back to a cause, the creator. We see design in the universe, the vastness of the universe, the beauty of the universe. We reason back to a vast, infinite, beautiful designer. We have the moral law written on our hearts. We reason back to a moral lawgiver. We're reasoning from effect to cause. That's what scientists do. I have an effect. What caused this? In fact, if you want to sum up why Christianity is true, because Christianity best explains the effects we see. That's why. Christianity best explains the effects we see. It best explains reality. Now, miracles are not necessary today for Christianity to be true. There could be no miracles since Jesus and the apostles, and Christianity would still be true. Now, I believe miracles have occurred and still occur. In fact, Craig Keener, a brilliant researcher from the University of Asbury University in Kentucky, has written a hernia-inducing 2-volume set called Miracles on Modern-Day Miracles. Okay? But even if he's wrong about all that, you don't need modern-day miracles to show that Christianity is true. And if miracles do occur, you shouldn't expect to see many of them, if any. Why? Because if miracles are designed to get our attention as special acts of God to confirm somebody as a prophet or confirm a truth about God, you shouldn't expect to see many of them. Because if they occurred all the time, they wouldn't get our attention. I mean, imagine if resurrections occurred routinely. What would the resurrection of Christ mean to us? Nothing. You go to somebody, you go, Jesus rose from the dead for your sins. The guy goes, so what? Uncle Leroy just rose from the dead 2 weeks ago. Now I got to give the inheritance back. No, it's got to be a rare event if it's going to get our attention. They have to be rare. You know what? If you think about this, you know what's really hard to believe? Atheism on this. Why? Because if atheism is true, or for atheism to be true, every single miracle claim and spiritual experience in the history of the world has to be false. Is that possible? Yeah, it's possible. Is it reasonable? No. No. It takes a lot of faith to be an atheist. All right, so we know the truth exists, that God exists, that miracles are possible because the greatest miracle has already occurred, the creation of the universe out of nothing. So now we want to see, is the New Testament true? Not that it's inerrant right here. If you get the book, we get into inerrancy, but you don't need an inerrant Bible to show that Christianity is true. We just want to see if this one event from the ancient world, the resurrection of Jesus, really did happen. And I want to list 8 lines of evidence that the New Testament writers are telling the truth. We don't have time to go through them all. They're all in the books. We only have time to briefly look at 2 of them, but I'm going to list them here. They all begin with the letter E, all right? We have early sources. We have eyewitness details. The texts are filled with eyewitness details that many of them we can confirm. There's embarrassing stories. I'll talk about this in a minute, as well as excruciating deaths, so I'll hold off on those. Number 5, embedded confirmation. This is probably the best evidence you've never heard of that the New Testament writers are all independently witnessing the same historical events. I call it embedded confirmation, but if you want to know what this is, go home and Google 2 words, undesigned coincidences. Undesigned coincidences. In fact, there's a whole book written by Lydia McGrew a few years ago called Hidden in Plain View. When you read this book, you're going to go, these people had to have been eyewitnesses. There's no way they could have coordinated all this. I call it embedded confirmation, but undesigned coincidences is what it's normally called. Expected predictions, that deals with Old Testament prophecy. If I had just one Old Testament prophecy to make my case on it, would be Isaiah 53. There's extra biblical writers, household names like Josephus, Suetonius, Thallus, Phlegon, people you probably read earlier in your devotions, right? You put all their references to Jesus and the apostles together, you get a story congruent with the New Testament. And then finally, you have the explosive growth of the church out of Jerusalem, which is really hard to explain unless the tomb was empty. Why? Who wanted Christianity to be squashed? The Jews and the Romans. How could they have done it easily and immediately? Could have gone to Jesus' tomb and taken out the body. It would have ended it right there. They couldn't do it. Why are there Jewish believers in Yahweh starting a movement out of Jerusalem, claiming a resurrection, if the resurrection didn't occur? How could they have pulled that off? They couldn't have. Now, as I say, there's a lot in the book on this, but I just want to cover a couple of these briefly. Embarrassing stories. Why does this help tell us that the New Testament writers are telling the truth? Historians know that if there's something embarrassing to the author or authors, it's probably true. Why? Because you're not going to invent details that make you look bad. In fact, let me ask you guys a question. How many people in here have ever lied to make yourself look good? Okay, if you don't have your hand up right now, you're lying to make yourself look good, and it's not working. We know you're lying. All right, how many people in here have ever lied to make yourself look bad? You don't do that, right? You might lie to make yourself look good. You won't lie to make yourself look bad. Well, the New Testament writers have filled the New Testament This is true of the Old Testament as well, by the way, but we still got the New Testament, have filled the New Testament with embarrassing stories they never would have included because it makes them and even Jesus look bad. That's why we call this the duh factor. They're not making this up. Let me just give you a few of these. Notice the New Testament writers are considered dim-witted. They don't even know what Jesus is doing half the time, right? How many times they go, we didn't know what he meant. We didn't know what he was saying. We didn't know what was going on here. In fact, they really don't even get his mission until he's already ascended to heaven. And then they go, wow, I could have had a V8, right? But up to that point, they're completely in the dark. And then their leader, Peter, is called Satan by Jesus. Do you think they invented this? Do you think Mark, who wrote this down, at one point said to Peter, hey, Pete, I'm going to make this a real interesting story. I'm going to have the Lord call you Satan. What do you think Peter would have said? Have him call you Satan. Look, I'm the leader here. This doesn't look good. And then Peter says, Lord, I'll never deny you. What does he wind up doing? Denying him 3 times. And then at the crucifixion, all the disciples, maybe with the exception of one, they all run away. This is like a Monty Python movie. Run away! They all run away. And who are the brave ones? The women. The women are the brave ones. Now, who wrote the New Testament down? Men. Now, what man is going to invent that he was hiding for fear of the Jews why the women went down and discovered the empty tomb? Would any man in here invent that? No, I mean, if I was there, I'd make myself look good, wouldn't you? I'd write something down like this. Let's see, we marched right down to and saw that elite Roman guard, and John said, get out. Peter, roundhouse kicked him. Philip said, we'll be back. And then on Sunday morning, we marched right down to the tomb, and we saw Jesus, who congratulated us on our great faith. And then we went and comforted the trembling women. I would never say I was Mr. Sissy Pants, why the women went down and discovered the empty tomb. And oh, by the way, why would you never say the women were the first witnesses in that culture? Forget about the fact that it was embarrassing to men, it was. But independent of that, why would you never say the women were the first witnesses? Because in that culture, a woman's testimony was not considered on par with that of a man. So if you're making up the New Testament story, you only have the men be the first witnesses. Yet all 4 Gospels say the women were the first witnesses, which is telling us what? They really were. They had no motive to make this up. It was embarrassing. In fact, one of the women was a demon-possessed woman, a formerly demon-possessed. Wow, gee, she's a great witness. There's even embarrassing details about the disciples in there, about Jesus giving the Great Commission. You know, in Matthew 28, when Jesus is standing on the mountain, he's giving them the Great Commission. They're all there. It says, go therefore, make disciples of all nations. Notice he doesn't say make believers. Disciples, followers. In fact, the word Christian only appears 3 times in the New Testament. The word disciple appears nearly 300 times. That's what at Moments of Hope Church we're trying to do, make disciples, not just believers. Anyway, he's given them the Great Commission, and it says right there about the disciples watching him in verse 17, some believed, but some doubted. He's standing right in front of them, resurrected, and some of them are doubting. They're going there. You see that guy over there? Yep. That guy over there is Jesus. No, it can't be Jesus. He was just killed not long ago. No, I'm telling you, it's him. It can't be. Jesus is dead. Oh, it's him. The Romans killed him. His spear went in his side. Blood and water came out. They crucified him. I'm telling you, that guy's dead. It's Jesus. It can't be. It is. How do you know? The women told me. They're not making this up. And there's even embarrassing details about Jesus. In Mark chapter 3, it says his own family wanted to seize him and take him home because they thought he was out of his mind. That's embarrassing. Also, Jesus is called a drunkard. He's called demon-possessed. He has his feet white with the hair of a prostitute, which easily could have been seen as a sexual advance. And oh, by the way, notice there are 2 prostitutes in Jesus' bloodline. Who are they? Rahab and Tamar. Do you think Matthew and Luke got together and said, you know what, I really think we ought to spice up the Messiah's bloodline a little bit. Let's put a couple of prostitutes in there. This will be good. No. In fact, there's a lot of shady people in the Messiah's bloodline. Judah, from where we get the term Jew from, Not a good guy. Read about him. Genesis 37, 38, somewhere in there. David, a man after God's own heart. Yeah, but he's a liar, adulterer, and a murderer. Gee, I guess there's hope for the rest of us then, huh? Bathsheba's in there. In fact, Matthew, when he gets to Bathsheba in the genealogy, he won't even mention her name. What does he say instead? Uriah's wife. Ooh. He's telling the truth, right? But it's a slam. Who was Uriah? Husband of Bathsheba, whom David had killed so he could have Bathsheba. They're not making this up. What do you think the Pharaoh would do if his historian said, hey, Pharaoh, I'm going to put a couple of prostitutes in your bloodline. You know, you're going to have some real evil people in there. No, he would chop the guy's head off. But the New Testament and the Old Testament both have all of these embarrassing details that they never would have invented if they were trying to pass off a lie as the truth. They're just telling the truth, as embarrassing as it is. There's more in the books. We got to do one more, and that is excruciating deaths. And this is the argument that says that these men who were in a position to know whether Jesus had risen from the dead or not died excruciating deaths when they could have saved themselves by simply saying, look, it never happened. Leave us alone. Now, it's really critical when we look at this. We need to realize that the New Testament writers, all of them, with the exception of Luke, were all Jewish believers in Yahweh. They already thought they're God's chosen people. And they didn't believe that a man could rise from the dead. They thought there was a resurrection at the end of time. They just didn't think there'd be one in the middle of time. And they didn't think a man could be God. And suddenly, they write down all of these things and say this really happened and then go die for it? I mean, what did the New Testament writers have to gain by making up a new religion? We're going to make up a new religion. We are? Yeah. What's it going to get us? So first we'll get kicked out of the synagogue, and then we'll get beaten, tortured, and killed. Well, sign me up. You know, what a great idea. Why haven't we thought of this earlier? No, they did not get anything good out of this temporally. In fact, they had every motive to say the resurrection did not happen, not every motive to say it did. You know, a lot of times I'll get questions from people saying, are there any non-Christian writers that talk about Jesus and the apostles? The answer is yes. They're in chapter 9 of I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. But often underneath that question is an illicit assumption. You know what the illicit assumption is? I need non-Christian writers because you really can't trust the Christian writers, you know, because those people are biased. You know, they embellish things. If you think about that for more than 10 seconds, you realize what a stupid objection that is. What did these people have to gain by making this up? They had everything to lose, not everything to gain. In fact, my friend J. Warner Wallace, some of you may know him. He's been on Dateline 6 times, more than any other cold case homicide detective, because he solves murders decades old. He was a cold case homicide detective in Torrance, California. Now, he and I do a lot of work together. He's written a book called Cold Case Christianity, a bunch of other books where he takes his cold case skills and he applies them to the greatest homicide of all time, that of Jesus. And he, as I say, been on Dateline with Keith Morrison several times. He says that whenever he finds a dead body, he knows there's only 3 reasons why that guy's dead. It's not 1,000 reasons. It's just one of 3 or a combination of the 3. There was a sex issue, a money issue, or a power issue. Sex, money, or power. Gee, I wonder why the Proverbs spend so much time on those things. If you think about it, those are the reasons we do anything illicit. Sex, money, and power are good things, but they're so good, we'll take shortcuts to get them. And so when you're trying to figure out what motivates somebody to do something, quite frequently it's one or more of these 3 motivators. Now, question, did the New Testament writers get real popular with the ladies for saying Jesus had risen from the dead? No. Did they get rich? No. Did they get power? No, they got the opposite. Paul had power as a persecutor when he was one of the Pharisees, and he became persecuted when he became a Christian. He lost all power. There's no motive to make this up. There's every motive to say it didn't happen. Not every motive to say it did. And then why would they die for a known lie? You say, wait a minute, Frank, time out. You know, there are some Muslims that'll die for Islam. Are you going to say if martyrdom proves Christianity, don't you have to say that martyrdom proves Islam? No. Why? Because there's a lot of differences between the Muslim martyrs of today and the New Testament martyrs of New Testament times. So let me just give you one difference for our purposes here. The Muslim martyrs of today haven't witnessed anything that tells them that Islam is true. They just have faith. But the New Testament martyrs witnessed with their own senses Jesus rising from the dead. They saw Jesus. They touched Jesus. They ate with Jesus. They verified he had risen from the dead. Many people will die for a lie they think is the truth. Nobody will die for a lie they know is a lie. And the New Testament writers were in a position to know whether it was a lie or not, and they went to their deaths anyway. Now, what I'm about to say may sound heretical to those of you who, like I believe the Bible's inerrant, but it's not. Just stick with me for just a minute. Christianity is not true because a series of documents we put under one binding we call the Bible says it's true. In fact, Christianity would be true if the Bible never existed. You say, how can that be? Do you realize there were thousands of Christians before a line of the New Testament was ever written? Frank, how could you be a Christian without the book of Romans? Was Paul a Christian before he wrote the book of Romans? Of course he was. Why did he write the book of Romans? Because he witnessed the resurrected Jesus. Was John a Christian before he wrote the Gospel of John? Of course he was, because he witnessed the resurrected Christ. You get the idea here. There were thousands of Christians before a line of the New Testament was ever written. In fact, I can say that the Bible did not originate Christianity. Christianity originated the Bible. Or we could put it this way. The New Testament writers did not create the resurrection. The resurrection created the New Testament writers. You would not have documents written in the first century by Jewish believers in Yahweh that said a man claimed to be God and rose from the dead unless something like that really happened. Christianity did not originate with a book. Christianity originated with an event, the resurrection. So, do you need an inerrant Bible to know that? Of course you don't. There was no Bible when Jesus rose from the dead. No New Testament. There was an Old Testament. Now, thankfully, God inspired the writers to write it down so we could know about it and orient our lives toward it or according to it. But always get back to the event. The event is what started Christianity. Now, how do I know the Bible's inerrant? Because Jesus thought it was inerrant. And I just have a personal policy. If somebody rises from the dead, I just trust whatever the guy says. Right? He said the Old Testament was inerrant and he promised the New Testament. And we go into all the details in the book. The point here is don't make inerrancy a premise. It's not a premise, it's a conclusion. You wouldn't go to a Muslim and say to a Muslim, or let me put it another way. If a Muslim came to you and said, you ought to be a Muslim, and you go, why? And he goes, because the Quran's inerrant, you'd go, I don't believe in the Quran. You got to give me evidence the Quran's inerrant, right? Same thing is true when you go to an atheist. If you go, you ought to be a Christian because the Bible's inerrant, he's going to go, what? I don't believe the Bible's inerrant. Why do you think it's inerrant? And it doesn't need to be inerrant for Christianity to be true. No, I think it is, but it doesn't need to be. All right? Now, we could spend more time. There's more evidence. Let's just sum this up, can we? First, does truth exist? The answer is, if somebody says there's no truth, you say, is that true? Does God exist? We went through 3 arguments, cosmological, teleological, and moral. When you put those arguments together, you get a being that looks a lot like the God of the Bible. Are miracles possible? The greatest miracle in the Bible is creation. Atheists are admitting the data for it. Is the New Testament telling the truth about the resurrection? Sure seems to be. We've just looked at 2 out of many lines of evidence that, yes, they're telling the truth. So if you want to go further, remember the books and the DVDs are there. Don't forget to text the word evidence to 44222. We're now teaching online courses. In fact, January 1, I'm going to start a new online course, The Essentials of Christianity. check our website for that. We're on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Our YouTube channel has over 900 short videos from the college campus, Q&A videos. So people ask a question, we try and give a short response to people. You can share those with other people. They're not going to watch a 2-hour lecture, but they may watch a 2 or 3 minute video, Q&A, right? So check out our YouTube channel. In fact, we're so into YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, we've combined these three into one social media platform. We call it UTwitface. All right? It's kind of a Jersey thing. You may want to sign up for that. We're on radio, we're on DirecTV, and if you don't do anything else, at least download the Cross-Examined app. 2 words in the App Store. Cross-Examined. 2 words in the App Store. And it's got a quick answer section. There's a lot of good stuff. The podcast's on there and everything. All right, last thing before we go to questions. It's true. So you're probably asking, okay, it's true, so what? So what if it's true? It means that somebody actually did die for you. That's what it means. Now, when I was in the Navy, I was naval aviation, so we had to earn wings, which were hard enough to earn, but there are very few insignias harder to earn than the Golden Trident, which is what the SEALs wear. Very few people make it through SEAL training, as you know, maybe 5-10%. Those that do wear that insignia with great honor. It's their identity in the military. When Michael Monsoor was buried in Rosecrans Cemetery in San Diego, California, just about every Navy SEAL on the West Coast showed up for his funeral. And when they passed his casket, they took off their tridents and they pressed them into his casket. They took their identity and put their identity in the one that died for them. That's what we're supposed to do. But our culture says, no, put your identity in your political party, or put your identity in your race. There's only one race, the human race. Or put your identity in your ethnic group, or even your church. Or put your identity in your vocation, or your bank account, or your sexual orientation, or your whatever. None of those things are ultimate. You're never going to achieve contentment putting your identity in those things. They're transient. The only way you're going to achieve contentment now and in eternity is to put your identity in the one that died for you. Have you ever done that? If you haven't, why wouldn't you do that? It's free. And the one that died for you didn't just die, he also rose from the dead to show you that one day you will as well. Father, I pray if there's anyone here who's never accepted the free gift that you've provided, that you literally dove on a grenade for all of us, that tonight would be the night. And if you're thinking to yourself right now, no, I don't need to do this, but there's another side of you saying, oh no, I ought to. The Holy Spirit's telling you ought to. Satan's telling you ought not. So, Father, I pray if there's someone here who's never accepted your free gift, that today you would help them accept, and they'd step into eternity with you. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you all for watching Moments of Hope online. I hope you enjoyed Frank's message. I know that when I left a couple of weeks ago on that Sunday night, I went, wow, what a thoughtful guy. I can see now why he has literally transformed thousands of lives worldwide with the great intellect that God has given him. You can continue to go online and see the message again and again should you need to, because I know that's a lot of information. We'd love for you to continually look at it, learn from it, because it's going to be in our archives and library for years to come. And Hopesters, always remember our heartbeat to know Jesus intimately, personally, to grow in him in so many different ways. This message today, a great way to continue to grow in Jesus, but ultimately to just go. And if you want to find some serve opportunities, go to momentsofhopechurch.org/go. You can see all the serve opportunities that are there that we support financially, that some of our Hopesters are already involved in. Call them, get in touch with them. They'll help get you involved. Remember, you find your life when you lose your life in something greater than yourself. Give your life away. That's where you'll find true hope. To God be the glory forever and ever. In Jesus' name, amen.